Hi, in this tutorial we're going to talk about setting up FlightGear. I've been using FlightGear for about a year and a half at this point, and what I've learned during this time is that FlightGear can be a lot of fun, but it can also be quite challenging to set up and configure to your own liking. So what I would like to try and accomplish with this video is to make a tutorial to help other people to do this so that they can hopefully have an easier time customizing FlightGear on their systems. So let's go ahead and get started with the tutorial. So the way that we're gonna do it is that there's gonna be two parts to this video. In the first part, I'm gonna do a demonstration flight. As you can see, I've already opened FlightGear here and set up this aircraft for that demonstration flight. And in the second part, once we're done with that demonstration part, in the second part we're gonna talk about how to actually configure those things that I've shown you in the first part. So like what configuration files to edit and things like that. We're gonna talk about launching FlightGear from the command line and from the graphical user interface with appropriate settings. Then we're gonna talk about customizing, creating keyboard and joystick bindings. I'm gonna show you how to get realistic, high-quality aircraft models and specifically development versions of those. So, for example, this Airbus A320 that I have set up here is a development version. So we're gonna spend a little bit of time talking about that. That's quite simple actually, but I'm going to show you how to do that. I'm also going to show you how to customize this this little map that I have in the bottom right corner of the screen. You can see it over there at this moment. Let me zoom it in a little bit. So this is actually a thing that is built into FlightGear. If you go to equipment, map opens in browser, you can open this map, but by default it looks a bit different. This can be quite nice to have to give some real-world context to your simulation. This is a real-world map from OpenStreetMaps. That's where it gets its data from. So yeah, it's a kind of nice additional thing to have. So yeah, these are kind of the main topics that we're gonna cover. Just one kind of thing that I'm going to add to what I just said. I've told you that we're going to talk about configuring custom, creating custom key bindings and joystick bindings. Well, one thing that one kind of really custom thing that I made is that I wrote a script to allow me to do various kind of interesting things with this throttle controller that I have on the left side. On my desk, you can see it at the bottom of the screen. I wrote a script that allows you to use this little joystick on that controller to pan the view like this, so that you can look around the cockpit as though you were sitting there on the flight deck, and that kind of adds quite a bit of kind of natural feel and realism to your experience. I can pull on the joystick to some in some direction, then I start kind of looking there, and then once I'm done, I can just release it and it snaps back to the center. So that's kind of one of the things that this script does. It also does some additional things, but this is can be quite handy because otherwise it can be kind of difficult looking around. That's what I found. So I wrote this script. So let's get started with this demonstration flight. We can start taxiing, and then I can keep explaining things as we go. So let's do that. So I'm gonna release the parking brake and add some thrust so that we can start moving. I might have to go quiet at times because to focus, because it's quite difficult to talk and fly, control the airplane at the same time, but we're gonna try to manage. So as you can see, I'm starting to taxi, and it's already quite handy to have this additional control. Just like look to my left and then just let go and keep looking straight ahead. This is kind of, I feel, what you would be doing if you were actually sitting there in the airplane. So I find this functionality really quite essential, I would say. I kind of feel like that something like that should be available by default, or like like it took me a while to configure this, to write this script and figure out how to write a script for FlightGear in the first place. So yeah. So another thing that we're going to talk about is I'm going to spend a little bit of time talking about this aircraft, A320, Airbus A320, because I spend most of my time using FlightGear with this particular model. So I have learned a few things about it. For example, I have one of the things that I've customized. It's not really a custom setting, it's just kind of something that's difficult to configure if you don't know how. So if you go to the aircraft config window here, there's this tick box here, use separate tiller axis. So the tiller allows you to use nose wheel steering. It's this controller over here, which the pilot would turn to control the nose wheel while taxiing. So this is different from the rudder. By default, you would get the rudder and the tiller be controlled by the same controller, which kind of makes sense if you have some a limited setup where you only have one controller. So you might want to do both with the same set of controls. But if you have, for example, a joystick like I have that has a twisting, that you can twist to control something, which is usually referred to as the Z-axis of that joystick. So you can assign the tiller to that and it would be quite a natural thing to do. So the thing is that even though that there is that tick box over there, the property that you have to assign to that tiller axis, I had to just find myself by looking through the property browser in FlightGear. The property browser is something that you can browse through by pressing the / key. You get this window open, and then you can look at different things here, different properties. That these basically kind of, I guess I would explain it as kind of those properties represent the current state of the simulation. Like at any given point in time, those properties change in real time, and so there's a property for the tiller axis, but you have to know what it is. And I couldn't really find any documentation on that, which is kind of weird. But yeah, so I'm going to show you how to configure that, for example. And I've also configured quite a few custom key bindings for this particular aircraft, which I'll show you in a moment. Let's first complete this checklist before takeoff. So we need to set auto brake to max. Then spoilers arm. To arm the spoilers, you would usually do this, click over here, and that would arm the spoilers. What I did though is I created a shortcut. I assigned Alt-B to do that. So if I press Alt-B, that arms the spoilers, which is quite a bit more convenient than clicking there. Then flaps takeoff. We're taking off with flaps 1. So I'll go ahead and set flaps to 1. I just use the button on my joystick controller. That's a default key binding, or like a joystick binding, nothing really all that special. So in the final item is a takeoff config test. It is this button over here, which I can press. Let's see, okay, I'll fix that in a moment. I just have a pitch trim set not quite right. Once we line up on the runway, I'll fix that. So yeah, we'll finish taxiing up until to the end of this taxiway, and turn right again, and then we're gonna be on the runway, which will take off from. The flight that we're gonna do looks like this. Oh, actually, yeah, I forgot to do something here, but we're gonna fly a circuit like this. We're not gonna fly this long thing. It goes off to the west here. We're just gonna fly from this point straight to here. But it's gonna be a short circuit around this airport. We're in Oslo, Gardermoen Airport. We're gonna take off from runway 10 left here, and we're gonna land on 10 right. So that's the plan, basically. And during that flight, I'm gonna show you what customizations I've made, and kind of, in particular, the functionality of this custom script. I'm gonna go in a bit more detail and show you a few more things that it can do, because it can do more than just panning the view like this. So that is the plan. Yeah, having this ability to just like look around in this way is really helpful during taxiing, for example. That's at least one circumstance where it's helpful, but there's definitely other circumstances too. Like looking for a runway in the distance, for example, because it can also zoom in and out, but we'll get to that. So, okay, we're all lined up. Let's stop here for a second, and let me fix a few things. So I assigned the custom key binding Alt-M to open the flight management computer, and I need to remove some waypoints here, which I forgot to do. So let me do that. So let's see real quick. Yeah, so this is the route that we're gonna fly. So like, yeah, the flight management computer is over here. You would otherwise have to look down and click, or there's also a custom view that this aircraft has that you can access by pressing 4, the 4 key on your keyboard, and you can do it from here as well, but that way you're not looking straight ahead. So if you're doing something in flight, having this Alt-M a shortcut is really helpful. There's also an issue with our pitch trim setting. let me fix that. So let's see. Let me see. Performance. Oh, yeah, okay. I see what happened there. Yeah. Okay, so now the warning is no longer appearing, so we're good. Another shortcut that I created is Alt minus and the Alt equals sign. Equals sign is the same button as plus, so kind of minus plus, you could say roughly, which controls the range of the navigation display, so I can zoom in and out more easily. Otherwise, you have to use this button over here. Also, to switch the modes of the navigation display, I use Alt left bracket and Alt right bracket. I will I'll be sharing all the configuration files for my setup, so you can kind of use that stuff as templates. Yeah, but that's gonna be in the second part of this video. So, yeah, okay, I think we should be good to go. Oh, I'm not forgetting anything. It's easy to forget though. But I think we should be okay, yeah. Okay, so let's say we're ready for takeoff. We'll release that parking brake. Increase the thrust to 15%. While holding the toe brakes. And then release them and add full thrust and start rolling down the runway. Rotate. Gear up. Reducing the thrust. We're starting to accelerate. Flaps up. Okay, let's engage the autopilot. I'll press Control A to do that. That's another custom shortcut that I created. So we got this master caution warning. That's because I didn't switch TCAS to the mode that it should be. This should be switched on, switched to. Forget what it's called, but I think it's TARA. Yeah. So okay, let's see. So I'll disarm the spoilers by pressing Alt B again. And we can also turn off and retract the landing lights and stuff. And I'll also do the seat belts because it's like not really the right moment to do that, but we're not going to worry about this for this demonstration flight. So let's see. So yeah, let's talk about this custom script that I wrote and what it can do. So while you're sitting in cruise like this, sometimes you might want to look around and for example, if I want to check out the view from that window, I might want to turn my head to the right, but I can also pin the view there. I can use this this little cross on the side of my joystick to pin the view, so I can press any of these arrow keys, let's call them, and that pinned the view to that point. So let me do that again. So let's look to the left now, and let's say I want to keep looking in that direction. So I can press, for example, like this key, any of the arrows would work, and the view will stay pinned to that point. So I can also adjust it and pin it again, and that's how that works. So I can also zoom in and out by using this this control over here. So if I press away from myself, it's zooming in, and if I press kind of towards myself, it zooms out. So that's also quite handy if you want to, if you found something interesting in the distance and you want to take a closer look, you can basically use the joystick, the pinning function, and this zoom and the zoom function together to look at that thing that you found interesting in the distance. So to unpin the view, you just press one of these arrow keys again, and that just snaps everything back to the center. So that's kind of that's basically the functionality of this script, almost all of it. There's also one thing, but I'll get to that. So as you can see, this can be quite handy to for like in many different situations. We saw that it's nice to have it during taxiing, but also like while you're flying, if you want to look at something close up, it's quite nice to have these things available. Maybe check out that town over there, or that village, or whatever that might be. So, and then like, okay, I'm done looking, I need to do something important, and then just press one of these keys and your view is back to the center. So that's that script that I wrote. Then one last thing that the script can do is you can also press the joystick to switch between two field of views. So I have this kind of more zoomed out version and less zoomed out, more zoomed in and more zoomed out version. So I use this one mostly, and this one is just something that I might use if I just want to have a broader view for a while, but this one feels most natural to me. I could also like zoom all the way out, of course, but that kind of looks pretty unnatural. So I just set two settings for that. And yeah, something that I also forgot about these arrow keys. They can also, you can use them to switch between predefined points. So this one just looks straight ahead. There's one kind of looking outside, basically, of the main window. And if you press up again, you're looking at the overhead panel. You can press up again, and that will wrap the view back to the point that is at the bottom. So that would be the pedestal. If you keep pressing up, you kind of get this view, and you're back to the center. So then I can go down to this view, then at the pedestal view, and then it wraps back to the overhead outside and straight ahead again. So that's also a functionality of that script. So the left and right buttons also work the same, so you can look to the left like this, and then travels back to the right, and like this, and then we have back in the center view again. So these can be quite handy as well if you just want to look at a specific point quickly, and you don't want to like try to find this view by looking around. There's also kind of, but what you get in FlightGear by default is something like what I have here, like on in my right hand side on my joystick there's a small joystick which allows me to kind of pan the view around, but it doesn't snap back to the center. I could press the C key to get the center view, but it has a different zoom level or a field of view, like is what it's called in FlightGear, field of view or zoom. So yeah, and I could reconfigure the zoom level, of course, but I still like to have the C on the default setting, because it's kind of like, I think it's supposed to imitate the kind of field of view that the pilot would have. But despite that fact, I just prefer to have it set to, like, I just prefer this field of view normally, so that's why I have it configured in my script like that. And I can still have access to this default setting by pressing the C key. But back to the panning around, so this is still quite useful, what I have on the right hand joystick sometimes, if I do want to just like not just adjust the view slightly relative to the point that it's currently at, but if what I want to do is look to the side, but only for momentarily, where I want to keep looking is straight ahead, this joystick function on the throttle controller functionality is more appropriate. So there's use for all these things, but if you don't have like this snapping back to the center way of accomplishing this, it can be quite difficult to really use FlightGear, because there's already a lot going on with flying the plane, and yeah, you have all this stuff on top of that. It's just like becomes really unmanageable sometimes. So in any case, this is my script. I hope you like this functionality, and I will be sharing this and show you how to configure this in the second part of this tutorial. Let me see, let me kind of settle down and think where I'm at. So we are kind of almost, we might have to do an additional leg here, but that's okay, we can do that. So I think I'm gonna go ahead and in a moment, before we reach this deceleration point, I'm gonna just go direct back to this go-ter waypoint to just buy a little bit more time. So press Alt-M to open the MCDU, and I will go to direct rather, and I'll type in go-ter waypoint and insert, and the plane will fly back to go-ter, and that will give us a bit more time. so that we're not in a rush, and because like if you start rushing, you start really messing things up really quickly. Yeah, we need to start descending for sure, and let's go to so we're going to be capturing a glide slope at about 3,600 feet. So let me first descend to like 5,500, for example. So let's see. There's also some other shortcuts that I haven't shown you yet. They have mostly to do with the landing, so I guess I'll just get to them kind of naturally. There's a couple though that I can show you while we're doing this with maneuver here. Oh, it looks like we're starting to decelerate already. I think the plane just still went into deceleration despite me having made this turn. But yeah, let me extend the flaps, go to flaps 1. That's okay though, we can fly at a lower speed. So yeah, but will be easier to turn if we have more flaps. Yeah, so I created a couple of shortcuts that make certain things easier. For example, to open the airport information, you would normally go to view or not view location, select airport, but I created Control-Alt-A, a key binding to open that window, so that way I can just like quickly find the information that we need. And same for the weather. Control-Alt-W opens the weather dialog. Normally that would be go to the menu, environment, weather. So let's see what else. Terrain on display and the weather radar. So let's see, what are those key bindings? I haven't used them in a while. Alt-C and Alt-W. So terrain on display would normally be this button, and the weather radar is actually like down here, and it's this. Let me see. Is it this switch? I think it's this one. Yeah, display weather on ND. So navigation display. So instead of trying to find this small switch, it's pretty difficult. It's Alt-W. Just flips it for you like this, so you can just do that instead of having to flip it manually. So yeah, Alt-T terrain and Alt-W the weather radar. You don't see anything right now because there's like the weather is clear, and we're not above any close to any mountains or anything, so we don't see anything. But it would show you things if there was something there. So let's see. Yeah, everything is going well, I think. One other thing that I configured for this particular aircraft is gravity gear extension. So if you want to practice like emergency scenarios, like like dual engine failures, you will need the emergency gear extension probably, and it would normally be this. The extension is over here, but it's not actually implemented yet, so you can't click anything here, but there is a property that you can set that would allow the gear to extend when the normal extension is not available. So there is that control as well. That's just like Airbus A320 specific thing, but I have figured out how to configure that. Again, something that was just like something I had to find in the property browser by looking through the stuff here. It's not like really, there aren't any guides on that talk about doing that, to my knowledge. Although if you do know about some resources that talk about it, please let me know. I'd like to, I would be very interested to know about that as well. So yeah, just looking at my notes here to see if there's anything I want to mention here. So So during our landing, we're going to be using the instrument landing system, the ILS. Normally you would enable the ILS indicators by pressing this LS button over here. There's also this FD button which controls, or the flight directories. It's this green cross that shows you how to fly, to follow the navigation path. The path that is defined by your flight plan. So I assigned Alt F to turn on and off the flight directors on and off, and Alt L to turn on and off the ILS indicators. So that's also something that's quite handy, so that you don't have to like reach for the mouse every time, because most of the time you want to have your hands just on the controls, on the controllers, on the throttle and on the joystick. You don't want to like be messing with these additional things. You don't have to. Okay, let's see. So we're 12 miles away from the turn towards the airport. So let's go ahead and descend to our kind of an intercept altitude of 3,600 feet. So the airport elevation is 681 feet, and we intercept the ILS at about 3,000 feet. So that's why I'm descending to so 3,000 feet above the airport level. So that's why I'm descending to that point. Yep. So the airport is over there somewhere. I probably can't spot it from this far away, but I can try looking for it like that. And I don't have to like use the mouse to do that by using this custom functionality that I had implemented. I wonder what that is like, what that light is over there. Maybe there's an airport there as well. Oh, it is probably this airport. Yeah. But anyways, okay, let's see. So let's go flaps 2. press Alt L to enable the ILS indicators because we're almost there. I was hoping we wouldn't get this radio altimeter, but it's gonna be annoying because it's gonna be like keep doing that because the terrain is uneven, so we're getting different indications. But let's go gear down. About to turn, 3 miles to turn. I'll switch to the arc mode of the navigation display. So I'll press Alt right bracket to basically turn this knob over here. This is a bit kind of more easier to use at this point. We don't need to the whole 360 degrees because we're going to be flying in a straight line towards the airport. So we're slightly below the glide slope, which you can see over here, which is good because we're just going to intercept it pretty easily. I can arm the approach mode. I would normally have to press this button over here, approach, but I can press Alt A to do that as well, another custom shortcut. So we're turning, all looking good. Localizer captured. You can see it over here. And the glide slope is about to come in as well. Glide slope capturing. Glide slope capture. Okay, so now the airplane is flying automatically towards the runway, which is over there. Again, nice to look for the to have this functionality to look for the runway. Yeah. So another situation where it is useful. So we're 7 miles out. And we're all good. Let's extend the rest of the flaps. Flaps 3. Flaps full. Let's arm the spoilers. Alt B to do that. And is there, what else is there? I guess the lights, which I always forget to do. But that's kind of the proper way. So yeah, seatbelts on. Alright, so here we go, we've landed, and here we are. Let's see, let's watch the replay, because why not? So yeah, this is basically it for this demonstration part of this video. I'll just put away some things so that they don't distract me, the things that I don't want to be needing from this point on. And yeah, the landing was okay, but I kind of went a little bit couldn't really maintain the center line, yeah, could have stopped earlier as well. So it was like braking, and kind of took me a long time to slow down, but all that is fine. So yeah, the Airbus is really fun to fly. I really like it. And this development version is quite a bit more advanced, like I said, compared to the one that you get from the FlightGear hangar. One thing that I wish it was able to do is that you could like take over controls from the replay. You can do it with some aircraft with the built-in Cessna, for example. You can take over controls just from the replay, like from any point. Like let's say from here, I wanted to start flying. You could just press my controls over here and just take it over from there. But with this plane, unfortunately, it's not possible. It's also not showing correct indications during replay, which yeah, I wish it was different, but that's how it is. But you still can watch your landing, but that's kind of about it. Let's see what happened here.
100, 50, 40, 30, 20.
Yeah, I'm still learning to use the rudder pedals controller because this is I only recently got it, so might be kind of a possible explanation as to like why I went all like squiggly here, but yeah. It's okay. So yeah, basically once the replay ends on this aircraft, so I can just like skip ahead to the end. Now it says end of tape, escape to return. So now if I just press escape, everything just shuts down and goes back to the cold and dark state. That's how this works. But yeah, I still really like this aircraft. It's really a lot of thought has been put into it, obviously, and yeah, quite a realistic model. So great work that developers did here. Okay, so this is basically it for this demonstration part of this tutorial. Let's see. So I'm gonna go ahead and take a small break here, and then we're gonna talk about how to set up the different things that I showed you in this first part. So see you in a bit. Alright, so let's get started with the second part of the tutorial. So we're gonna basically have 4 sections here. The first one is gonna be about launching and file management. Then we're gonna talk about assigning keyboard and joystick bindings. Then I'm gonna talk about getting the development versions of realistic aircraft, and kind of some things related to the A320, like some customizations that I made to it. And the fourth part is going to be about the FI interface, the map that you can run in the browser. So before we get into like the first part though, I'll just kind of explain how I set things up here. So for all of the files that I'm going to be sharing showing you in this tutorial, I've put them up on this git gist that I've created. So there's quite a few files here, and you can navigate if you go scroll down to the bottom of this readme file, and there's going to be links to different files. They're just the files themselves are if you can also scroll down and just view the files, or you can click the links and they will take you to individual files like this. So this is how that is set up. One thing I recommend you do is that in order to get all of these files, so you don't have to download them one by one or copy things from here or anything like that, you can just copy the URL, open up a terminal and type git clone, paste the URL, and then type a space, and then type a name for a directory, for example, setting up FlightGear, and press enter, and it will clone that sort of like that git gist to your computer, and you will have this setting up FlightGear directory here. The reason I gave it a name is because if I didn't, it would name the directory this, so that would be a very kind of unrecognizable name. So you can rename it right away like that. And if we take a look inside, we have all of the files in there. So that's the kind of the most straightforward way to get all of the files for this tutorial. Now I also wanted to mention that I made this compiling FlightGear from source on Debian tutorial, where I explain how you can do just this, compile FlightGear from source and run a recent version of FlightGear. So if you're interested in that, I recommend you watch this video. The version of FlightGear that I use for in the first part of this video, on the demonstration part, is the current stable version, the current development version, or they call it next. So the current next version is not very usable because it's under construction, and it's like very hard to use in terms of the graphical interface at this time, but it's under development and it's looking pretty interesting. I really like the new graphics that they're working on there, so I might show little bits and pieces of how FlightGear Next looks as we go along, exploring like its configuration in this part of this video. So so yeah, this is just a couple of things that I wanted to mention. Now let's start talking about the first part, which is about the file management and launching FlightGear. Now why do I want to talk about file management? So let's take a look at that. This is just my configuration directory. We'll take a look at that later. We'll just clear the screen here. So by default, if you just run FlightGear without any of the customizations that I'm going to be talking about, it puts all the files that all the FlightGear files into the directory called .fgfs, which is located in your home directory. So ls. So this is how it would look. This is actually not the directory that I normally use. This is just there for testing purposes at this time for me. My directory is located elsewhere, and I'll show you where in a bit. But this is how your directory would look if you just ran FlightGear without customizing anything. Basically, it would just put all the different files into this folder. So all of the log files will go there, all of the cache files, all of the like scenery that it downloads, all of the aircraft that it downloads, and probably like if you wanted to create some your own configuration files, that's where you would put them as well. So everything would be like in the same folder. I personally don't like this approach. I very much prefer it when applications follow the XDG based directory specification, because it splits up the data into these different categories: configuration, cache, and data, and also sometimes state. But these three are kind of the main ones that you see around a lot. Unfortunately, FlightGear uses this kind of old school method of like storing its files. I mean, I say unfortunately, it's not like really that bad. You can use it, but it has its disadvantages, because when you have all the files in this one folder, it sometimes gets very hard to manage them. Hence, that's why I wanted to talk about file management. So there is a way, however, to configure these to tell FlightGear to put some of the files in different folders. So if we take a look at the man page for FlightGear, which is called FGFS, you can get this man page if you've compiled FlightGear from source by using the method that I described in this tutorial. So the man page is going to be there in the compiled version. So yeah, so if we look in this man page, we can see that there are several options for specifying custom paths, for example, for scenery files, for aircraft files, and for downloads, etc. So we can move quite a few of these files to different locations to make things a bit easier for ourselves in terms of file management. So what I did is I created a directory called local share FlightGear, and in that directory I created a few subdirectories. The main ones that we kind of need to know about here are the aircraft, the download, and the scenery directories. These are just kind of for, well, obvious things. The screenshots, if I take a screenshot, I just store it there. In Flight Recorder, it's like you can save your replays, and that's where I put them. But the aircraft, download, and scenery directories in my setup, they are hooked up to those specific locations by using these options, these command line options. I'm gonna explain how I set those command line options in a moment. But I'm just gonna explain what my file management layout looks like. So aircraft, download, and scenery. So let's see, let's take a look. So let me change directories there, and I'll just do ls star so that we can see inside those directories. So you can see that in the aircraft I have some aircraft models that I downloaded. These are those development versions that I talked about, and I'm gonna be talking about those in a later part of this video. So the download directory, now let's take a look again at the .fgfs, the default one. So the TerraSync was moved in here. TerraSync is the scenery that FlightGear downloads as you fly. So if you are at a specific location on the globe, it downloads the scenery tiles. So it's like a square sections of the Earth's surface, basically, with this information of how things look there. So by default it goes in here, but I moved the TerraSync out over here. I don't remember how texture cache got here. It probably is here because the download. Well, yeah, like basically, yeah. Okay, yeah, I remember now. So you can specify the download directory by using this download-dir option in the man page. I just got confused for a second because there's a separate setting you can set TerraSync to yet like its own individual directory, but if you don't specify it, yeah, you can use this TerraSync dir, but if you don't specify it, the TerraSync will go to download as well. I just use this I like it here in the download. And also let's take a look inside that download aircraft. This is where all the FlightGear hangar files go. So you can see that I have several different folders here for different versions of FlightGear, and that's because I have have more than one install of FlightGear on my system. So I have this current stable version, which I use the most. Then I have the development version, which I just compiled to take a look at what is new and what is being worked on. At this time, but I don't kind of use it regularly because it, like I said, it's pretty raw at this time. And then I also have an older, like 2020 version that I also use sometimes, but mostly I use the stable one. Another reason, by the way, you might want to split out the download directories, because if you have several installs of FlightGear on your system, then you can use the TerraSync, for example, directory for you can share this information between your different installs, so that, like, if you were using the stable, for example, and you downloaded some scenery, you open another version like development, for example, and that scenery is already there downloaded. It doesn't have to re-download it and waste disk space, because that directory can get pretty large. So if I just run dush download TerraSync, it will be quite a big directory, 67 gigabytes at this time. So yeah, if that was like duplicated for each of these versions, it will just waste a lot of disk space. This way you don't have to waste it. So basically, this is kind of in a nutshell my approach to file management. I listed the directories that I have over here. So I have the configuration directory, which I'll explain in a moment. I have the cache. Haven't shown you that yet either, but I showed you these. So the data, and then has these subdirectories: download, aircraft, and scenery. In the scenery directory, you would like just install scenery that you would download yourself. And other things like navigation data, for example, you would also install into scenery. I'll show you how to do that for the Airbus A320 when we get to that part of the video, but this is just for your kind of sort of like side-loaded scenery that you get not through FlightGear but from other places. So yes, let's now take a look at this cache. So in notes here it says FG home. So what is FG home? FG home is basically this .fgfs directory. This is the default value of FG home. There is an article on FlightGear wiki that explains this environment variable and what it does. Essential, and if you take a look over here under power users, they have this section here where they talk about parallel installs of FlightGear, about running parallel installs of FlightGear, and they recommend here that basically if you want to run parallel installs, you might want to set a separate FG home for each install, and that's what I do. So I've already separated my TerraSync, my aircraft, and like texture cache also went into download. So a lot of this information I've already moved out of the FG home. It doesn't live there anymore, and that allows me to set a separate FG home directory, or relocate it basically. And where I put it, where I relocated it is I put it into .cache. So that corresponds to the cache, kind of an XZG based directory specification, which I'm trying to kind of emulate here, more or less. If you take a look, like once you remove all of the downloads and like what else? Yeah, basically downloads from this directory, what you're left with is and like potentially maybe your own configuration files, etc. What you're left with mostly fits pretty nicely into the cache category. So there's like log files, and then there are these configuration files that store the graphical user interface settings. Like if when you're running FlightGear, if you change settings in there, they get saved into this autosave .xml file. And well, basically, roughly, it fit into the cache category. So that's where I put that, where I moved my FG home, because it had to go somewhere. So once I moved all of the data files into data, um, sort of like that corresponds to kind of this data home location. So I put that into local share FlightGear. It's kind of XDG based directory uses .local. I use local without the dot for my kind of custom files that roughly kind of fit into be like with the same structure, but just for my custom file. I don't use .local for that. That is kind of reserved in my system for what applications want to do. But for my custom stuff, I use just local, and basically I created this custom data directory. It's this stuff that I showed you. So I separated that, and what we're left with is cache and potentially my own configuration files, which we'll get to in a moment. So the cache is where FG home went, because what you're left with is more or less fits into that category. So if I open that or list .cache FlightGear, you can see that I have 3 subdirectories here. And if I look inside those subdirectories, you can see that it's just FG home but without TerraSync. I don't know why it has the aircraft here. It's just like it's there by mistake, basically. And over here, maybe like I just ran it at some point with without my customizations, and it just got stored there. But basically, it kind of should be like this. Should look like this, yeah. So this is kind of how I organized files, FlightGear files on my system. I hope this makes sense. It's kind of, I get that this is a bit of a lengthy explanation, but I find that organizing, didn't mean to do this, organizing files kind of is quite important. So like I said, it helps with when you run parallel installs, and it helps you just to manage files more better. Because, for example, let me go into my configuration directory. So this is the last one that I haven't covered yet. So the configuration directory looks like this. It's much nicer to have just this in a separate location than have it mixed in with all of this stuff like in here, I think. That's why I separated it. So I just created a directory called .config, called FlightGear, in the .config folder, and that's where I put all of my configuration files. So yeah, this is how I arranged things. Now, in order to make this work, I created a launcher script that looks like this. It's a short bash script that basically hooks up the FG home set to an appropriate value. So this is my launcher script for FlightGear stable, which I use the most. I have basically the same script for LTS. Let's see. And so I have the same script for the LTS version and for the next version, but with some values changed. So and the values that are changed are really only the location of the home directory, like a different sort of like cache directory in my system, and the the location of the main file that FlightGear launches. So for the LTS, it's the app image, because this is just the currently on FlightGear.org. You can download this this version. So if you go to FlightGear.org, they provide this app image for the version 2023.19. But the latest stable version that I use is a later version than that. This is just the launcher script for the development version. So what does this launcher script do? Well, there's a couple of things that it does besides setting the FG home directory. It also allows you to, let me close these other scripts because they're just the same and we don't really need to look at them. So now at this point we're going to start talking about launching FlightGear, and there's two scenarios that we're gonna take a look at. So launching FlightGear from the command line and launching FlightGear from the graphical launcher. So we're gonna start with the command line. So the first thing to know about when it comes to launching FlightGear from the command line is that you can use configuration files to set command line options, so that so that FlightGear launches with appropriate settings. So you don't have to like just pass a bunch of options on the command line manually. So the format for this FGFS RC file, that's what it's called, is you can find it's described in this man page, FGFSrc. So if we take a look, it's a very short man page. You can read through it very quickly. And basically, what it says here is that the default location of for such a file, for such a configuration file, is .fgfsrc. So a file called .fgfsrc in your home directory. Again, this kind of goes hand in hand with that like default location of FG home, and as you can probably guess, I customized this as well, and there's a couple of reasons for this. For this, I'll actually do a little demonstration, and I will launch FlightGear next with that FGFSrc file. That way you get to see how FlightGear next looks these days, and we'll also learn something about the FGFSrc files. So first I'll show you the FGFSrc file that I have though. This is what I have there right now. So it just sets the call sign and then aircraft, it sets that to UFO. So now, where am I right now? So I'm in my directory where I'm compiling my FlightGear usually. The latest next build that I built is in next test, so that's what I'm going to launch right now. Alright, so let's run FlightGear next, and we don't see any splash screen because that's currently disabled, and these menus, as you can see, look different. So like it's looking pretty raw, and it's under development right now. But I will go into one of these settings though to change the time of the day. Let's try dawn, because that will allow us to see a little bit of the new graphics. So kind of the sunlight looks different compared to the current stable version. So this is kind of like most obvious when the sun is at this like very low on the horizon, and also the water. We'll take a look at the water. it looks more realistic, but for this I will let's set it to morning so that we can see it better. So like the water now looks kind of like water, but and FlightGear stable in the current FlightGear stable version, it's sort of like doesn't look quite as realistic. So so it's kind of nice that FlightGear Next is looking pretty good, pretty interesting. So this is just like a little sneak peek of the current development version. But what I wanted to show you here really is how the configuration file behaves. So right now we'll launch it with these settings and everything worked fine. But now if I try to launch another, try to run this, basically try to open another configuration file from this configuration file. So set a -- config option here and try to launch another RC file from this file, it will not work. It will give you this warning or like this error message saying that it is currently not supported to load a configuration file using -- config from another configuration file. But this does not apply to loading XML property list files with -- config. So -- config, as you could, as you already probably understand, is an option that you can use to load a FGFsrc file from like another location, a location other than the default .fgfsrc from in the home directory. So we'll take a look in the man page for FlightGear and search for -- config. Here it is. The man page doesn't mention for some reason the property list files, which are XML files, but that error message mentioned them, so that's why I wanted to show you that message as well, because like that kind of like gives a crucial bit of information, because the XML file is how you can customize FlightGear, and just like that's the main kind of the way you, that's the kind of configuration file that you use to change to assign key bindings and like do any kind of customization to FlightGear itself. You use those property list XML files, and you load them with -- config as well. So you can use -- config in an FGFsrc file to load an XML file, but you can't load another FGFsrc file like that. So you can see that I have 3 FGFsrc files here in my setup, and in this first one I am loading an XML file. So that is what that is for. But I still like having multiple configuration files, and as you can see I have 3 of them here, because I like to split my settings into some roughly kind of defined categories, so that it's easier to manage. So this script also allows you to load multiple FGFsrcs automatically from a predefined location, so that you don't need to like worry about that anymore. So you can just like add multiple paths to this array here, and it will load those FGFsrc files for you. So that's another thing that this script does. So the first thing that it does is sets fghome, which is basically just this value. So you set this configuration variable to wherever your fghome is, and you set your RC files here in this array, and they get automatically loaded. This setting is just the main FlightGear file, that is the executable where the program launches. And this compiled version it's this run of GFSRC run of GFS.sh script, and but it can also be, for example, an app image like you have here for the LTS version. So this is an app image that is available on FlightGear.org. For an older version, you can set conf of GFS bin to that value as well. So this is what these 3 variables do, they are kind of, this is the configuration section of the script, so this is for you to change, and the rest of it is just works as a program that you like don't need to touch unless you want to kind of extend the script. So this is the configuration section. So this script can also do some things that are related to the graphical launcher, but before we do that, I'll just kind of conclude this part about the command line launching, is that like this script is basically once you have set all of this stuff, this script will just allow you to create a couple of configuration files like I have here, and you can set all your settings in there, and then just what you do is you just run FGFS well dash stable in this case, but you can call the script whatever you want, and then press enter, and all of that stuff will get loaded. You don't need to set any other options unless you want to override something. And then you can set, for example, maybe like time of day equals afternoon, for example. That will override what you have in the configuration file. I'll have the same thing here, but you can set it to something else, like to real, for example, for the current current real time. So that's how that is intended to be used. And like just one small thing to add, I don't actually type FGFS stable, I just type FGFS, and the reason for that is because I have created a symbolic link that is called FGFS which links to FGFS stable, because I have let's do it like this. So here I have this is the folder which is where all of these scripts live, and this folder is on my path. So this is where I just put all of my launcher scripts, and I have the three scripts in there, and I just linked the FGFS stable to FGFS because that's easier to type, and this is the one that I use the most. This is kind of my main one, but maybe at some point like the development version gets really good and you can use that kind of normally, and then I can just switch it, relink it to next, for example. So that's how I have that set up. Over here, if you look in this section, this is my configuration directory layout, and let me see, so here it is on my system. So I have just been showing you this part, the RC subdirectory. These three files are in there. They're called flight, main, miscellaneous, and flight. So you can also click these links. It will take you to the same places as these links take you. That will just take you to these individual configuration files. So I have three configuration files, main, miscellaneous, and flight. And basically how I organize things here is that the main file has kind of the most essential settings, such as setting the download directory, the scenery directory, and the aircraft directory. It's these things, so it sets all those three values. Then it also sets the main configuration file, which I'll talk about in the next section of this video. This is also related to this configuration file, this second line, and this part just sets the browser app to launch the FI interface, the map. So this is how you can do it. I use a separate profile for the WaterFox browser. It's kind of a fork of Firefox, so you could just, if you wanted to like use, for example, Firefox, you would just type Firefox, and you could use like a Firefox profile here if you want, if you kind of use that feature, but you can just do it like this. So this is what the main file is for. These settings, I kind of copied them from the graphical launcher, which I'll show you in a moment, so we'll come back to this. And the flight RC file is simply simply sets settings for your current flight. Like this is what I use it for. So the aircraft, the call sign, time of day, airport parking space, things like that, the runway. So this is what I would use this. So like if I kind of already know the name of the airport that I want to start my FlightGear, and I might just kind of, and like other parameters, I might just edit this file and then just type FGFS, press enter, and I'm good. So I can start playing right away. So this is how I use that. So now, if I don't know what I want yet, and I need to look things up, it might be better to use the graphical launcher. So I use that as well sometimes. So let's talk about that, because there's also some things to know about that when it comes to kind of like hooking up those custom directories that we've created. You need to also do some of that stuff in the graphical launcher. So this script also does some things related to the graphical launcher, which I'll explain in a moment. Let's just kind of open the launcher and take a look how it at what we have there. So I'll just type FGFS dash launcher. Oops, I made a typo. So so this is how it looks. So the graphical launcher, when you kind of whatever you set in here, it sets all the different command line options for you, of course. This is kind of its purpose. And you can view the command line options that it sets by pressing Control L, or you can go to this menu here and select View Command Line in here. So these are all the command line options that are currently set in the launcher. And basically, if you remember my miscellaneous file, this is how it looks. Basically, I took those settings from here, I just copied the values, and I put them in this miscellaneous file. The reason I called it miscellaneous is just because this is something that I rarely edit, and this is just there, and I took those settings from the graphical launcher. Maybe when I kind of sort of like get more experience with FlightGear, I figure out how to like tweak those settings, and I might recategorize them. But at this time, this is how I organize things for myself. So yeah, this is where those settings came from. Now let's take a look at the settings tab in the graphical launcher, and the reason for that is because, well, actually let's take a look at the add-ons tab first. So you can see that over here I also added my aircraft directory, my custom aircraft directory. It's the same value as this one. So you kind of need to add it, because if you want to see the custom aircraft that you installed there, and if we go here, I like most of the aircraft here are actually from like not from the FG add-on, so not from here, but I just downloaded them myself, which I'll explain how to do later in this tutorial. So the A320, the A330, and the Cessna, or like not this Cessna, but this one, 182S and 182T, and then the MD-11 and MD-80. This NASA space shuttle is from FG add-on, and the Cessna and the UFO and the FG video assistant are there by default. They just come with FlightGear. You don't need to install them. So basically, yeah, in order to see the aircraft that you installed yourself, and you put them into some custom directory, you can add those directories here. This corresponds to the FG aircraft command line option. So this is what you need to set in the graphical interface in order to use kind of this type of custom custom setup. Now, if we look below the additional aircraft folders, we also have the additional scenery folders. These correspond to, quite obviously probably, to the FG scenery command line options. So you can see that I have a path set here that is share local share FlightGear scenery nav data FG nav 8 data, and here it is as well. And I also have another one set here in the graphical launcher, which I don't have currently set in my configuration files for the command line launching. But basically you add the scenery folders here. You can probably see that this is not really scenery but navigation data. This is for the Airbus A320. It allows you to have departure routes and arrival routes be available in your flight management computer so that you can create flight plans. I will show you how to where to get this navigation data when we get to the section where I talk about getting development versions of high quality realistic aircraft models. If we now go over to the settings tab, we can also set the download location here. The download location is where FlightGear will download aircraft when you use this browse tab and click install. So that that option corresponds to the download-dir command line option. There's also this this box here that says additional settings, and you can set command line options here that are additional to whatever else the graphical launcher sets. So I have my main preferences config.xml file added here. This is the same as this, and also allow-nasal-read. Again, it's like this line from here. I'll explain what it does later when we get to configuration and talking about my script, and this is for that. So yeah, we'll get to that. But and then this third line is just again setting up browser apps to allow the FI interface to open in the correct browser. So it's just these two options, HTTPD and browser app. So I added them here as well. So you also need to set them here separately because the graphical interface doesn't have like anything, any kind of switches like this for these particular things, switches or fields where you can type that in. So you need to set a command line option in this box to allow that to work. So this is the graphical launcher. One kind of additional thing that I want to, like one last thing actually I want to explain with regards to this script is what it does is it also it will not load any of these RC files when you're launching FlightGear when you're using the graphical launcher, because if you did that, then all of these things that you set in the configuration files would get mixed together with these command line options that the graphical launcher uses. It would become a total mess, and that's not how it's supposed to be done. So it will, if you're using the -- launcher option with it, it will not load the RC files. So this is what this code does here. It checks if there's an argument -- launcher, and if it finds that argument, if one of the arguments that you pass to the script is -- launcher, it does not load the RC files. And it also only enables full screen if you're just launching it from the command line. So if you just for example do this, it launches at full screen. But if you set launcher, it does not open full screen. This is something that I just had an issue with on my system, so that's why I added that in there as well. So yeah, this is pretty much it about the script. I realized it was just a pretty lengthy explanation, but yeah, like I said, FlightGear can be a lot of fun, but it can be also a lot of stuff to configure. But once you set everything up, you're kind of good to go because everything is in its place and you know where everything is, and you can start using it. So I think I'm going to take a small break right now, and then in the next section we're gonna start talking about configuring FlightGear, for example, like keyboard shortcuts and stuff like that. So I'll see you in the next part. In this part of the video, we're gonna take a look at creating keyboard bindings and joystick bindings in FlightGear. I will also be talking about the custom script that I wrote for my Thrustmaster TWCS Throttle controller that allows you to look around in the cockpit and to pin the view to a certain point, etc. But I will be talking about that script towards the end of this section of the video. The script file is over here in view-angle.nas, that's the script, but we'll start by looking at all of the other configuration files. So as was mentioned previously in this video, FlightGear uses the XML format for its configuration files, and you can see several XML files amongst my various configuration files. For example, there's preferences.xml, joysticks.xml, keyboard, mice, and there's also two configuration files for each of the joysticks, and then there's two GUI themes. So all of these are XML files. So before we start digging into these custom configuration files, let's take a look at where FlightGear stores its default configuration files. So no matter what way of installing FlightGear you use, you will have to download something that is called FGData, and that is a directory that looks like this. So if you use the method that I describe in this tutorial on compiling FlightGear from source, you will have it installed to install FlightGear FGData in the directory where you compile FlightGear. If you download the app image from flightgear.org, then once you launch the app image, you will be asked to download FGData, and you'll basically download, I think it's a zip archive, and then you'll extract it somewhere, so that way you'll know where your FGData is. So all of the default configuration files, all of the default FlightGear configuration files are stored here in FGData. You can see that there's a joysticks file, a keyboard file, and a mice.xml file. So it looks kind of similar to what I have here in my configuration directory. So these are this is where we are gonna where you can get the default files that you can use as templates, and that is also where you can look up the code for the default bindings that are used in FlightGear. So let's now take a look at the configuration files. Let's start, well, we'll have to start by looking at the preferences.xml file, because that file actually kind of references all of the other files. This file is what basically pulls all of it together, because this file preferences.xml is being loaded here in my main fgfsrc file. By using this -- config option, it loads this preferences.xml. So that's how FlightGear kind of knows that it's there. And this preferences.xml file in turn loads all of the other XML files that I have in my configuration directory. One thing to note here is that the preferences.xml file corresponds to the defaults.xml file in the FGData directory. So if I open the defaults.xml file from my FGData directory, I get this huge file that seemingly it looks nothing like the preferences.xml file that I have here, but it actually has the same structure, just this one has much less data in it. So for example, if I look for this string GUI styles, we can find a corresponding part in this defaults.xml file as well. So here is the same kind of structure. It defines theme 0 and theme 1, and I have 2 and 3 defined here. So this one adds to the defaults that are defined here. So this is how they correspond. Let's now also take a look at the keyboard.xml file. So keyboard.xml looks like this. It's a file that has all of the keyboard bindings. So you can see like each binding basically has this format, and if we scroll down, this is how it all looks. It's not kind of the easiest format to work with, I find personally, but this is how it's done. So what we're gonna do here in this section of the tutorial, we're gonna go ahead and just create one keyboard binding. I'm gonna show you the overall process, and that way you'll get an idea of how it all works, and you can start creating your own. So before we start doing that though, let's also take a look at keyboard.xml from FGData. So this is how it looks, and you can see that there's a ton of key bindings here that you can use as templates or modify to your liking in your custom configuration file. So we'll start with the keyboard. So let's go ahead and let's see, what are we gonna do? We're gonna launch FlightGear. And we're gonna create a key binding. So here's, by the way, a list of all of the key bindings that this file has. I did it for my own reference, and so that you can also find things more easily, because scrolling through this mess is just not really all that easy, but this way you have at least kind of an overview of what this file has. So in the very first part of this video, where I did the demonstration flight, I showed you these two bindings for opening this airport information and weather information. There's also another one that I recently realized I want to make, and that is for the time settings. So sometimes you want to adjust the time of the day, and like going to this place, like to this menu, is not always super convenient. So I thought we would create a key binding here because I need it anyways, and it would be a nice addition to this file. So let's see, how are we gonna do that? Let me open another terminal, because so we'll need a file from the FGData directory. So let's see, ls opt FlightGear stable install what was it? FlightGear FGData. So here we go. Let me cd there. So there was a file here that has all the stuff that is stored in the menus. Sort of like basically all of the commands that this menu executes. There's an XML file for it. So I'm gonna try to find that. I think it was in GUI. Yeah, it's this menu bar.xml. So let me open that file over here. Let's see, tab new, GUI menu bar.xml. So here we go. So this file basically has all the different commands, and I'll just search for time, because that's what I'm after. And here we have an item from the menu, and here's a binding. So you want to look for a binding tag when you're kind of scouring all these other XML files, because that's the tag that you will need over here to create the binding, like a binding of your own. So let's see, like, how do you create a binding? So there's several articles on FlightGear wiki that talk about this. Specifically, there's this reassign keyboard bindings article, and there's also this bindings article that goes through all the different commands that you can use within this binding tag and stuff like that. So I'm not gonna go through all this stuff, but I will leave links to these articles so that you can so that you have them for your reference. But we will take a look at a few examples here, and hopefully things will become, you will get a general idea of how it works. Yeah, and there's also this conditions article that's also relevant, because you can have conditions within those like bindings that, like for example, if one property is set like to a certain value, like a a keyboard shortcut would you do one thing, but if it's something different, it would do something else. So these three articles are relevant. We're gonna take a look first at something in this first article, reassign keyboard bindings. We'll need to find basically each binding, the way it is put together. It has this key code here, so this number is important, and this number represents a key on your keyboard, and it's kind of like very another one of those things that FlightGear has that is not intuitive at all. So let's see what how we can find this key code. So they list several methods here. What I'm gonna be showing you here is this method using the property browser. But there's also this, it's worth noting that they also talk by looking in keyboard.xml. So keyboard.xml from FGData, that's what they mean by looking in keyboard.xml. So you go into your FGData directory, there's a keyboard.xml file, and you can, there's like a bunch of key bindings here, the default ones, and you can use like them for reference, and so they already have key codes there. So for example, for this one, Control A, there will be a key code 1. We'll take a look at how this works in a moment. So this is also kind of helpful in finding key codes. But we'll take a look at how to find them by using the property browser. So the property browser, you access it by pressing / on your keyboard. It opens and looks like this. And then you go to this location, devices status keyboard event. So let's go there. Devices status keyboard event. And so you have this kind of this view. It looks like this. Now let's see. So I want to create a shortcut for this menu. I want to have a. Oops, I closed it by accident, but that's okay. So I want to have the shortcut. I have Control Alt A for airport, Control Alt W for weather, and Control Alt T. I don't believe it's assigned to anything, so yeah, I'm gonna use Control Alt T for this. So I will just press Control Alt T, and it's important that you press like the entire like not just press T and think that you'll get the correct key code, because you won't, at least not always. Because like for example, here I'm pressing lowercase t and I'm getting 116. If I press uppercase T or shift T, I guess 94 or 84. Control T, I get 20, and maybe shift control T will be something else entirely. No, it's still 20. So I don't know how this works, and honestly I don't want to know, because it's just like super convoluted, and I just want to create a key binding. So here's how you do it. You press your key combination in its entirety with all modifier keys. So Control Alt T, that's what I want, and my key code is 20. That's all I need to know from here. So so I will copy this and use this as a template, and I'll move it down here, and I'll paste it. So let's see, what is it called? It's environment time settings. So I'll call it that. So these name and description tags are just for, they're just descriptive. They don't actually refer to anything. So this key code is what defines everything, and then also these modifier tags, which we'll take a look at in a moment. So this is just so that you know what it does basically. So I'll copy this as well, and I'll just go up here for a sec, and I will put this information here as well. So delete that, and yeah. So okay, Control Alt W. So now we need to add the correct command, and that thing we can get from here, from menubar.xml that we opened previously. And I'll just copy the contents of this binding tag, and I'll move them over here, or copy them over here rather. And I will adjust the indentation, and I will save the file. And also I just realized that I forgot about the key code, so I need to change that as well. Let me just test this again. So it's 20, Control Alt T, and yeah, and I didn't change this either, so let's change that. So there's also these mod tags here, as you can see, mod control and mod alt. So these obviously define the modifiers that you use with your keys. So basically, this key code is kind of like I showed you, like Control T and lowercase t and uppercase t. They're all different key codes. So but you still need to set all of the modifiers that you're using, regardless of the fact that the key code might be sort of like unique to a particular combination already with modifiers. So the modifiers, you have to set them regardless. So for this, Control Alt T, just kind of get the key code and set Control and Alt. The modifiers themselves, the modifier tags, they are described here in this article, in the section adding or modifying key bindings. At the bottom here, you have this list of all of the modifier tags, all the possible modifier tags. So the most common ones that you'll probably be using are Shift, Control, and Alt. So yeah, this is how you set the modifiers. So now you might be able to use this reload input menu entry from the debug menu. For me, this for some reason does not work. Let me try it though, but no, it doesn't seem to work. I'll comment on this later when we get to joysticks configuration, but for now I will just go ahead and restart FlightGear. So I'll go over here and start it again, and hopefully the key binding will work. Let's see, so Control Alt T, and yeah, there we go. So it works. Awesome. So this is the general workflow for creating key bindings in FlightGear. So it involves finding a template and then putting together a key binding like I just showed you. It's also good to go through these articles on FlightGear Wiki. This one reassigned keyboard bindings, and also this bindings article, which lists all the different commands that you can use. So for example, this dialog show command that we just used, and also this conditions article, which allows you to create bindings with conditions, so that like a button would do something or a key would do something only if this condition is met. For example, if some property is set to a certain value, and all kinds of different conditions. So this is what kind of how you create key bindings. I'm also providing these configurations files, make them available over here in this git gist, so you can use them, and hopefully that will help you out. Unfortunately, I don't know of any good documentation on FlightGear properties, which would be really nice to have like a comprehensive documentation. So if anyone out there knows of such a resource, please let me know. I would be very interested to know about that. So let's now go ahead and take a look at assigning joystick bindings in FlightGear. Assigning joystick bindings works pretty much the same or like very similar to assigning keyboard bindings. So for example, if we take a look at one of my configuration files for one of my controllers, we can see that there's a bunch of bindings here, and they look pretty similar to what we saw in keyboard.xml. So they have a description tag where you can put some description to just help you remember what this does, and then there's a binding tag, which is the same kind of tag that you saw in the keyboard.xml file. One thing that is different about these tags for the joystick bindings is that we have here an axis tag, and also if we scroll down here we see that there's a button tag, and in the keyboard.xml file we had the key tag with a key code. So there are so each axis on the joystick and each button has a number, and I'll show you how you can find out that number a bit later. But basically, otherwise, this tag, this binding works pretty much the same as what we have in keyboard.xml. So let's now also take a look at this joysticks.xml file. So it looks like this, and it you can see that it refers to both of these files for each of the individual controllers. We can also see that the preferences.xml file refers to the joysticks.xml. So basically, preferences.xml, or if we kind of go back to the FGFSrc file that loads the preferences file in the first place. So first there's this -- config option that loads the preferences.xml file, and then the preferences.xml file loads all of the other files, including the joysticks.xml, and then joysticks.xml loads these in the files for each of the individual controllers. So this is how this works. There is also a joysticks.xml file in your FGData directory, and that file looks very similar to what I have in my configuration, except it doesn't have the lines for each of my individual controllers. So I basically added these two lines, but otherwise that file is the same. So we can close this because we don't need to look at it. It's almost identical. So before we start talking about creating joystick bindings, and I'll be giving you an example of how you can create a binding for like a button that you saw in the cockpit and that you would like to assign to your joystick. So in the example that I'm going to be giving, I'll be using the A320, and it will be assigning these two buttons here, cancel master warning and cancel master caution. I assigned them to these two buttons on my controller. By default, those buttons are assigned to brakes, but since I have the rudder pedals and I can use the brakes on those, it made sense to make use of those buttons and assign them to something different. So that's what I did, and that's what I'm going to be showing you here. But before we talk about that, we need to first learn about how this joysticks.xml file works, because there's a couple of things that you need to know about that. So in order to demonstrate this, I will start FlightGear, but I will start it without any of my customizations applied. I'll use this command to do this. You'll have the same command available if you install FlightGear by using the method that I described in this compiling FlightGear from source on Debian tutorial. So let me see, let me switch time to morning just so that it looks a bit better. But we'll be actually looking only at one of the windows from the menu here. So let's go to the file menu and let's open input devices. So once we've opened input devices, we see that both of my controllers were recognized here. And if we go to joystick config, we get a window like this, and it does allow you to configure some of the bindings from here, but this is actually quite limited, and if you try using this, you will soon discover that it doesn't allow you to do something that you want to do, and then you will have to edit the configuration file. So really, this is just very basic, and it doesn't allow you to do a lot at all. But one thing that you can use this interface for is it allows you to find out the name that you need to use over here in the joysticks.xml file, what you need to call your file. So how do you do that? So the first thing to note is that for each of our controllers, which you can switch between by using this menu here, for each of our controllers we have a configuration file already loaded from the FlightGear's FGData directory. So the FGData directory has this input joysticks subdirectory where it has a number of configuration files for different controllers. Let's take a look at that for a second. Let's see. So if we just take a look at that directory, so it's an FGData input joysticks. I'll just use the tree command to show you what it has inside. It has a bunch of configuration files for different controllers that FlightGear has available out of the box, which is pretty nice. So yeah, and it automatically recognized my controller here as well and found the correct configuration file for it. So let's now try changing something here. So I will go ahead and just change this button 31 to something. It doesn't actually exist on the actual controller, I don't think, but it doesn't matter. We just need it to make a change here. So I'll just assign it to autopilot disconnect, and now we can see that this path has changed, and that now it uses a configuration file located in this .fgfs directory in my home folder. So let's take a look at that file now. So let's see, Thrustmaster TWCS Throttle XML. So if we scroll all the way down here, we can see that button 31 is assigned to autopilot disconnect. One other thing to note about this file is the file name. So this file name is what you want to use here in the joysticks.xml file. So this is one of the things that is helpful about this interface. It allows you to find out the correct name to use over here, because like if you read this description, it says that the named drivers are only picked up if one of their names matches the joystick hardware. See output of the JS demo application. I'm not really sure what this refers to, but I was able to successfully use this method of finding out the name. So yeah, this is what I'm sharing here. And this is basically you can use this file as a template to get started. Another option would be to copy the file from the FGData directory, but you can also use this. Basically, yeah, you can use this as a starting point for configuring your joystick. But there is something important to know about this, because if you're not careful, there is a chance you might lose your configuration. So let me show you what this is all about. So there's this reset configuration button. So if I pressed it, it would reset it back to using the default configuration file from the FGData directory. Now this file that we were just using, it wasn't deleted, but it was changed, and so if I reload the file, we can see that this name tag was changed to the value of unused invalid config, but the rest of it is intact. So at this point you haven't lost any data yet, but FlightGear is just not using this file anymore. You could basically restore this tag to this value, and I think it should be able to pick it up. But what's important to know about this is that once this has happened, it was reset, you reset the configuration, you press this button, it reset everything to using the default file, and it changed this file. It change this name to unused invalid config. So from here, if you make another change, let's say I assigned button 31 to another value like NWS toggle, for example. Now it's using the file from the FGFS directory again. So if I now reload that file, now it basically created a completely new file and overwrote the previous one, and now we have NWS toggle here. So right now I have it open in the text editor, and I'm able to just go back in history and go back to this unused invalid config, and here's the autopilot disconnect. So basically, if this file, if I reset it by accident, but it had a bunch of customizations that I made, and then I accidentally again assign something from here, it would basically overwrite all of my customizations, and all that information would be lost. So you have to be very careful with this. This is kind of one of the reasons why using this interface again is not a very good idea, because you will, like, unless you're doing something really basic, you will want to edit the configuration file, and even the default configuration file. So if I reset everything, even the default configuration file, you can see that it has these custom buttons which actually contain custom code that is not possible to edit through this interface. So even the default configuration files that FlightGear comes from are not entirely possible to edit from this interface. So you will have to, you will probably want to edit the configuration file pretty quickly. And since there's this a chance of accidentally resetting it and overriding all of your customizations, this is probably not the best way to do things. So, but you can use this to find out the name for your configuration file to use over here in the joysticks.xml file. So to do that, just make one change, doesn't matter what it is, and you'll get a new file created in in the input joysticks subdirectory over your .fgfs directory, and then you can just use that file as a starting point. You might think that sort of like this is the same file name, but actually it's not the case for all of the joysticks. For example, we go here to the T16000M controller. We can see that the file is called T16000M, but if I if I make a change, we can see that the file gets named Thrustmaster T16000M. I'm not sure, like I haven't tried like all of the name combinations, but I just know that this method of obtaining the file, the correct name for this file works, and so this is what I'm sharing here. So yeah, let's see. So this is how you find the name for this file, and this is how you obtain kind of a template for your joystick configuration file. Now we can close FlightGear at this point. And now let's launch FlightGear again, but now with all of my customizations. So we'll load all of these files and see what the difference is with regards to that input devices window in FlightGear. So I'll go ahead and just run FGFS, and then I'll also set disable full screen so that it shows up correctly in the tutorial. So yeah. Okay, so FlightGear has started. Now we can go to the file menu and open input devices. We can see that the controls are still recognized, but if we go to joystick config, you see that we don't get that window where we can change things anymore, and this menu is also grayed out. Basically, this is what is going to happen once you create a setup like this with a custom joysticks.xml file that loads joystick configuration files by using this JS named tag. So you might kind of feel like you've lost something by not having access to this interface, but actually, like I said, you're not really going to use it all that much. And again, it has this problem where you might accidentally lose your customizations, which I just really don't like. So the advantage of this method is that FlightGear won't ever mess with your configuration files. They're just completely under your control. You can do whatever you want with them, and they're safe. They're not going to get changed by accident. So yeah, this is why this method is what I'm sharing here, and that's what I would recommend really, because the other one is really, like, I had problems with this resetting things by accident, and yeah, it's really not a good way, I don't think. So yeah, I'll close this copy of FlightGear as well, and let's go back here. So once you've obtained the file name, you can use this file now in your custom setup, like I'm showing you right now. So let's now take a look at creating joystick bindings. Like I said, I'm gonna give you an example of creating a custom binding for the Airbus A320, and we're gonna look through the source code for the aircraft to find out the code for this. Let's see, it is on the throttle controller. Yeah, so for the master cancel master warning binding here, and then also cancel master caution. But before we start looking for this code for this binding, let's first find out how we can get the number of a button or an axis for your joystick that we'll be assigning things to. So in order to do this, the method that I used is by installing the joystick package from Debian repositories, and in that package you get a utility that is called JS-test. So here is its man page, and basically the only thing that you need to do here is just to type in JS-test and give it a device name. So I'll show you how to do that in a sec. But yeah, in order to install the joystick package, just type sudo apt install joystick, then press enter and enter your password, and the package will get installed. So now to this JS-test utility. So I just switched to this other view because it's gonna work better for what I'm about to show you. So in order to use this JS-test utility, you need to give it a device name. So so all your joysticks appear under dev input, and then you get JS with a number. So JS0 is joystick 0. So if I type that in and press enter, I get this output, and it's basically going to be changing live in real time. So right now I'm moving the little joystick on my throttle controller, and you can see that it's changing the axis number 0 and axis number 1 as I do that. So this is what this utility does, and I can also press a button. So right now I'm pressing the button that I'm actually going to be assigning to master caution or a master warning. So there's two buttons, and right now they're appearing over here as buttons 1 and 2. So this way you can you can clearly find out which number you should use in your configuration file. So now let's find out how we can create such a binding. So for this example, I'll be talking about assigning this button number 1 for a cancel master warning, and button 2 for a cancel master caution. So how would you sort of like figure out what code to put here and under binding? And as you can see, I even have several bindings assigned to this single button. So this button, when it's pressed, it executes multiple bindings. So the way that you find this out is by looking through the aircraft source code. So here is the repository for the A320. And you can see that there's already some XML files here at the root, but there's more XML files that are located in these subdirectories. So the way that I like searching through this stuff is by using the grep utility. So you can use grep, and then you can, I also like setting the -i option for case insensitive, because I don't know how the developer might have spelled the name that I'm going to be looking for inside the XML files. So it's better just to set it to case insensitive, and we're going to be looking for caution, for example, here. So, and then we need to pass all of the XML files in this directory and in all of its subdirectories to grep. So in order to do this, in bash you can use this double star glob pattern and then /star.xml. That will pass all of the XML files in this directory and in all of its subdirectories to grep. So one thing to know about this though is that you need to have something enabled in your shell, specifically the glob star shell option has to be set to on. So glob star refers to this double star. If you don't have it enabled, it won't work. So in order to enable it, you need to run this command shopt. So if it says off for you, run this command shopt -s glob star, and then just press enter, and it will enable glob star in this current terminal session that you're running, and you'll be able to use this command. If you want to enable glob star permanently, you should add shopt -s glob star to your bashrc file. So that's how you can get that working. So now let's go ahead and run this command that we put together and see what output we get. So by the way, if you want to use color in grep, so the output's color, it's a bit easier to read, just set --color and it will enable the color. But basically what we see here is all the different lines where it found this word caution. So as you can probably guess, searching through source files like this might take a little bit of kind of guesswork and sort of like inferring what the developer might have called the thing that you're looking for in the source file. But I personally didn't have much trouble doing that, because it's like if I'm looking for master caution, that's probably what it's going to be called. Or if not, I could just start searching for like individual words like master, for example, or something like that. So this is kind of how you might want to approach this. There's also one other option that is useful to know in grep, and that is the -l option that just outputs all of the files that had matches. So instead of kind of looking through this long output where it outputs all of the lines, this way we get to see only the file names, and it's a bit clearer as to how many files we need to look through. So basically, let's take a look at the first file. So let's say we don't know like what we kind of we're looking at this for the first time. We're kind of not sure. So let's just start looking through them one by one and see what we have there. So I'll open the file in Vim, and I'll search for the string. I'll use case insensitive again, this \c that you see at the bottom left corner makes it case insensitive, and I'll search for caution. So this is the only line where this word occurs. You can see that that's the only search results that I'm getting, and we see that it's wrapped in this tag alarms. But for our bindings, we're looking for the binding tag. So this looks like this is not what we're looking for. So we can close this file and look for the second one, especially since there's only two. It's kind of makes sense to move on to looking at the next file. So let's take a look at that file. So models, flight deck, A320.flightdeck.xml. So let's open that file and again search for that caution string. And so over here we get something that's called animation. Again, I don't see any binding tag. So I'll keep looking. Again, don't see any binding tag, and still no binding. But over here, I do see a binding tag. And so basically, this once you have found a binding tag, there's a good chance that this is the code that you're looking for. So basically, in my configuration file, the binding that I've created, it has all of these lines that I just selected, and I just copied this code and I pasted it, and then I just adjusted the indentation to my preference. But this is basically the code that I have there in my configuration file. So you can also see that it's wrapped in this tag called action. I found that you come across that quite a bit as well. Maybe that is also something that you could look for. I'm not entirely sure, but you definitely want to look for bindings, because that's what you want to do. We can also see that there's multiple bindings associated with this particular action. And as far as I can tell by just looking at this code, it has to do with the fact that pressing this button does multiple things. It turns on or off the light on the button, for example, and plays a sound, and then it also changes this this property master CUAT translate. So yeah, that's why there are multiple bindings here. As far as I can tell, that's the reason. So we also have the master caution, and or actually, yeah, I think I mixed them up, but the point, they're almost identical. Like I was looking at the warning here, but yeah, this is the code for the actual master caution, but we also have the master warning here. So for the warning, it should probably be like somewhere close to this bit of code, so we can just kind of look around and see. And yeah, here we have the master caution, and again there's an action tag that has a bunch of bindings. Here it looks very similar, and so this is the code for the second button. So this is basically kind of how I managed to create all of these different bindings for my joystick that are specific to the A320. So there's probably like some things that I could improve here. I just haven't gotten to that point yet, but potentially I can see that I might also add conditions at some points, so that I kind of lock in those bindings to this specific aircraft. I'm pretty sure, I haven't checked that yet, but I suspect that I can do this with conditions. Kind of tell it like, do this only if the aircraft that is currently running is this name, and maybe like if it's this other name, do something else. So this is something that I can see that it could be improved by right now. They're just like put in here for specifically for flying the A320, because that's what I've been doing the most. So I didn't quite get to the point of customizing that further yet. One other side note that I wanted to make is about my throttle controller. You saw that I also have the rudder pedals, and there's only like 2 configuration files here for the joystick and for the throttle, but no rudder pedals. So the reason for that is because the throttle controller actually has a separate, I can show you, it has a socket where you can plug in the rudder pedals directly, so that you don't have to use, so it's this plug over here. You can plug in the rudder pedals over here directly. You can also use the rudder pedals with the individual, like with the separate USB cable, but since I have the throttle and it has this additional socket, it makes a whole lot more sense to do that, so that way I don't have to have an extra USB cable. So basically, yeah, the rudder So there's like two rudder things over here. So one of them, um, is this thing on the joystick, this way of controlling the rudder, and the other one is the actual pedals that you plug here. So this throttle controller has a few axes and yeah, there's no buttons on the rudder pedals, but a few axes. It has reserved them for this functionality that is available with the socket where you can plug in the rudder pedals. So you can use a single configuration file to have both controllers working based on that. And then there's also the brakes for the rudder pedals, right brake and left brake, so they are axis 2 and axis 4. So that's how that works. I thought I would throw in this information here as well in case someone has the same controllers, so that you know how this all works. I thought I would also add information about what controllers I have. So this is the joystick that I have, and I have also this throttle and these rudder pedals. So I'll leave links to their individual product pages in the description of this video. So this is what I can say about assigning, creating joystick bindings and keyboard bindings in FlightGear. As you can see, the process can be quite involved, but eventually you get the hang of it and you can get to know how these things work, so it's okay. One thing that I wish there was more of is kind of either templates of bindings that you can just like paste into your configuration files, or a more kind of comprehensive documentation on how all of this stuff works, because even though there are these articles on FlightGear wiki, it seems like the information that is available in these articles is not doesn't cover like absolutely everything, and yeah, like it doesn't look like kind of official documentation. So I wish there was kind of official documentation of just like this is how this works, like here's the kind of the variables that are involved, and then you can refer to that document continuously. So sometimes you do get sort of like little code snippets, like on the A320, in the A320 repo here in the README, they have a code for autopilot disconnect, auto throttle disconnect, and engine mode selector, but that's it basically. So like only three sort of like things. So it would be nice if there was just like a more detailed list of all the things that you could potentially assign, or like instructions on how to find the relevant code, so that you don't kind of have to go through this all yourself and figure it out as a beginner, basically as someone who's new to this and never seen such a system before. So like yeah, that is something that I think would be very nice to have. So now let's conclude this part of the video where we talk about configuring joysticks and keyboard with having a short discussion about how you can set up my script for the Thrustmaster TWCS Throttle controller. Potentially you could use it with other controllers as well, but I just wrote it for my specific controller. So I'll show you how kind of what things it has, so that you can potentially customize some of that stuff. So let's start by looking at so the script file. The script file is located here in preferences nasal view angle.nas. So one thing that you need to set in your configuration, be it an FGFSrc file or the graphical interface, you need to set this option allow-nasal-read, and then set this option to point to a directory where you have your nasal script. So in my case, it's in my custom configuration directory, preferences nasal. So this allows FlightGear to run scripts from there. So that's like a security thing, and you need to kind of decide which directory you're going to be storing scripts in. So in the graphical interface, let me show you real quick what to do there as well. So in settings, there is this additional settings section where you can set custom command line options, and you just need to set this allow-nasal-read option over here as well. So that's all you need to do as when it comes to this. So okay, so that's the allow-nasal-read option. Now let's also take a look at the preferences.xml file, where we have this, I set this custom property here to point to the, basically to my configuration directory. The reason I did this is because I couldn't find any way like to find the location of the configuration directory within the script. It seemed like the FlightGear wiki mentioned something, but when I tried that method, it just didn't work for me. So basically, there was no other way to define it, so I had to just set a custom property here. So I created a sort of like a kind of folder in the properties, which I'll called custom, and then I set a property there that I called config-dir, and I set that to the value of my to the path of my configuration directory. So then in the Thrustmaster TWCS Throttle.xml file, there's this nasal section at the top, which launches the script. So in it uses that property custom config-dir that I created. So if you for some reason don't want to have this custom property, you can just kind of modify this and set like this. So I would set like home alex.config FlightGear, and you can do it this way, and you can remove that property from the preferences.xml file. That's just another way. Now, before we start looking at the script, let me just explain what nasal is. So nasal is a scripting language that FlightGear uses internally. So its syntax and basically the way that the language feels, it's very similar to JavaScript, I found. So if you're familiar with JavaScript, kind of nasal will make sense to you pretty quickly. There's this this article on FlightGear wiki that just kind of says a few words about it, and it has the sidebar with all the documentation for this scripting language. Again, it seems like the FlightGear wiki is the documentation for the nasal scripting language. I haven't found any other docs on it. So yeah, basically you can read about it over here if you're interested in that. So, and you can see here's the script file itself. The script looks like this. So the extension of the file is .nas for nasal, and yeah, so like this is how the script looks, and so let me show you what how it connects, sort of like how you can call this script from your controller's XML file. So first you need to include it like this. You have this section over here that references the file. There's also a little quirk in this script currently, which requires you to adjust a value manually within the script itself, and that is this joystick index over here. So this value and this value over here, this is the same value. So in order to set this correctly, you need to go to open FlightGear, then open the property browser by pressing the / key, and then you need to go to this place, devices, status, joysticks. So just navigate to devices, status, joysticks, and then all of your joysticks will be listed over here. So for this first one, it seemingly doesn't have an index, but the index for that one is just 0, so you can use the value of 0 over here. So in order to check which joystick is which one, you simply open each entry, and then you move a control on your joystick. So right now I'm moving that little kind of joystick on my throttle controller, and I can see that no values are changing in response to my inputs over here, even though there is this one for some reason that is constantly changing. I'm not sure why that happens. You might see that, but you want to look for something that changes in response to your inputs, and I'm not seeing that here, so this is the wrong one. So I can go back and now go to joystick 1 and move that controller again, and we can see that axis 0 and axis 1 are changing, and as I'm moving that joystick, so this is the right controller. So we need to set the index to 1 here, because that's the one that we just identify as the correct controller. So just go over here and set this value to 1 and this value to 1. So that's all you need to do. This is kind of a bit of an imperfection in this script at this time. I wasn't quite able to figure out how to get around this. So if there's someone out there who's familiar with the nasal scripting and who knows how to avoid having this manual step here, please go ahead and leave a comment on the GitHub gist for this tutorial. So just go over to this page, scroll all the way down and leave a comment over here. I'd be very interested to hear from you. Also, just to clarify, if this value is not set correctly, then the part of the script that won't work is the pinning of the view. So if you can't pin your view, that means that the issue is most likely with this index, so you'll need to set it. But let's take a look at sort of like the bindings that use this script. So you can find all of the bindings very easily by just searching for string view underscore angle, and you'll find them very quickly. So these first two bindings, these are the bindings for the joystick that allows you to look around in the cockpit. So axis 0 and axis 1. Then we have also cycle field of view. That's when you press the joystick to kind of use the more closed in field of view and more zoomed out field of view. So that's what that is for. And then there's also this change angle function, or then there's also these 4 other bindings that this is for the kind of the arrow button on the side that allows you to look left, right, up and down to certain positions, predefined positions. And those positions are defined here in this config section of the script. So over here, you can try to tweak these values to your liking and maybe customize this a little bit. But basically, yeah, so we kind of looked through these bindings. So basically, the way you use this is that you need to call a function within this script. So it's like view angle dot look around. Then there's view angle change alt and view angle change angle. So there's 3 functions that you can use. So let me now explain kind of a little bit about what values you pass in here. So for the look around function, there's the axis value, which can be X, Y, or Z as well. If you use the Z value, it will allow you to sort of let me see. So Y goes left and right, X goes up and down, and Z goes like this, sort of like it will rotate the view. It's not very useful, but it's just was easy to add, so I included it. So yeah, and then the minimum and the maximum values, they define how far away it will turn. So if you kind of use the value that is too great, it will kind of get stuck there, and it will sort of the view will sort of become jittery and stuff. So you need to find kind of the appropriate value that works for you. I found that these values work for me pretty well. Um, so yeah, you might want to even keep them, but you can play around with them and see what works. Maybe it somehow depends also on the aircraft and kind of how far you can sort of like look. I'm not sure what it depends on, but basically this is what these values do. So it's in degrees. This basically says, so this is the horizontal view. So minimum is minus 120. So that is, I'm not sure if it's the left or right, but it's one of them. So to the one side it goes to like 120 degrees, and to the other side to 90 degrees. The reason they're not the same is because, again, like if I set it to a value that's too great, there's just like some weird issues that come up. So, and the same here, so it's 60 degrees up and down. So that's what these values do, min and max. Then this rest value, it basically is, it defines the resting point once you release the joystick where it goes. So I would kind of leave this alone, basically leave it at this default value. I'm not really sure. It's been a while since I wrote the script, so I'm not exactly sure why I included it here. Because like the whole purpose of this is just to go back to the center once you release the joystick. But it is here. You can try to play with it, but I honestly don't remember what the purpose was of leaving it here. I kind of wrote the script. It's at this stage where I kind of made it sort of like it works for my particular setup, and it's kind of in a decent state, but there are still things that need to kind of that could be improved and worked out. But I'm releasing it right now kind of as is, and then we'll see where it goes. If there are some improvements, then we can change that later. There might be some idiosyncrasies here and there. So yeah, so now there's this invert value that simply flips the direction. So if you find that, like when you pull on your sort of like on your joystick or do whatever it is, like on your controller, and it goes in the opposite direction, you want the numbers kind of flip around, then you can set invert to 1, like I have here. When it's set to 0, that means no inversion. So basically, you can also use true and false for this. So like true to enable inversion and false for disabling inversion. That will only work in FlightGear, sort of like the current, if you compile the current stable version of FlightGear, so the 2024 version of FlightGear. So it will work in that version. So if you compile the current stable version, for example, or the current development version, you can use true and false, but you can't use true and false in the 2020 version. So if you have that, you need to use 1 and 0 to represent true and false. 0 for false and 1 for true. While we're on this topic, I'll also say that the script uses the true and false syntax because it's very hard to write a script if you use 0 and 1, because it's just kind of very hard to read it afterwards and know what this means. Is it a number or is it like a true false value? So if you're using the 2020 version of FlightGear, an older version where true and false don't work, so just replace true with 1 and false with 0 in this script. Just run and search and replace, and that should fix it. So that's that. Then there's also this sensitivity value. This, like the name suggests, adjusts sensitivity of the joystick. So if you set it to 1, I set it to 2, but if you set it to 1, the relationship is going to be linear, so there's going to be so the raw value that comes from your controller will be directly converted to a value from 0 to 1, basically, and it's going to be a linear relationship. But if you set it, for example, to 2, the relationship will be like this. So if you input kind of, for example, like 40%, it will only result in a value of like less than 0.2. But as you kind of push more and more, the higher values will eventually converge on 1, which is the maximum. So this allows you to just like for small adjustments to be less sensitive, basically. So I find that the value of 2 looks pretty well for me. So the value has to be from 0, basically a positive value from 0 and upwards. So if I it has this thing where you can play it, so like it just this kind of shifts the value around from 0 to 10. So so yeah, this is how you can adjust sensitivity of this look around function, which is just looking around in the cockpit, to a kind of by using this small joystick on the controller. So let's now take a look at the change angle function. So this function simply cycles through the views that are defined here in this config section. So axis x and y refers to the x and y that is defined in here, and then -1 goes backwards and +1 goes forwards. So that's what that does, and there's 4 of them, 2 for each axis, so left and right, up and down. So this is it for the change angle function. That's all that it does. So now let's take a look at this change alt function. So it takes an argument that can be either -1 or +1, and you can see that the binding that I defined here is cycle field of view. That is cycles the field of view when I press the joystick. So you might wonder why it's called change alt. That's because the idea here is that you could have like any number of alternatives to cycle through for each of the views that you might be in. So in principle, when you have an array like this for each of the values x, y, and field of view, you could define separate alternatives. So right now it cycles through 0 and 1 and then flips back to 0. So you could have like more here, 3 or whatever. And you can define them for each of the views, and when you pass 1 to this function, that cycles forwards, and when you pass -1, that cycles backwards. So in principle, when you use this change alt function, the idea is that it would cycle through the alternatives for each of the views that are defined, cycle through alternatives defined in these arrays. So if you set these values to an array, then you have several alternatives. If there's just a number, then it's just kind of one alternative. You could also put it into an array. There wouldn't be any difference in that case. But this isn't quite working right at this time, unfortunately. It was a lot of work to put this together, and so basically I haven't quite finished it. So you could try still to play around with it and see if it works for you. Like these numbers work just fine for me, and but when I started adding more fields of view, I encountered problems, and at that time I was very tired of writing this script, and it took like ages just to configure my joystick. So I'm releasing it as is right now, and maybe there is potential to improve this in the future. But this time, this is how this is the state that the script is in. And finally, each of the views also has this change axis parameter, which can be set to either true or false. And when it is set to true, it tells the script that when you are in that view, if you click, for example, if you were going from going up and down, if you click left or right, so if you change axis, then it can go directly from the kind of the centered position over to the next position on the other axis. So for example, if you were here in the inside view, it would go directly to left, but and if you clicked right, it would go directly to the right. But if you were, for example, in this pedestal view, if you clicked left or right, it would first go to the to the kind of to the default view, just reset the view to the center basically, which by the way, these two are the same. So they are basically they are the same thing. They refer to the same position in the center. So it would just reset everything to the center. If you were in the pedestal and if you clicked left or right, it would just reset it here first, and then once it's here, then you can go left or right. So this is what the change axis parameter does. Okay, and so on this note, let's conclude this section on assigning joystick and keyboard bindings, and let's move on to talking about how you can get high quality development versions of high quality realistic aircraft models. This is going to be a short section. We're almost done with this tutorial, so there's two things that we have left to talk about, this aircraft models topic, and then there's also configuring the FI interface, the map that you can open in your browser that will show you your location on the real world map as you're flying your simulation in FlightGear. So and these should be pretty short, so we're almost kind of done with this rather long video. So let's go ahead and take a look at this. So I will recommend here 5 aircraft models. So this is the A320 that I used in the demonstration flight in the very first part of this video. So that is that. You've seen that, you know what it is. Then there's also the Airbus A320. So this aircraft model is kind of, it feels quite similar to the A320. Like the only difference is that it has fewer features implemented. So if you use the flight management computer on this model, for example, it has a lot less there. But it kind of still is a good model and it's nice to have. So I'm recommending it as well. Then there's also the MD-11 and MD-80. These are currently being very actively developed, and they are also the same level of quality and realism as the Airbuses. So these are pretty cool as well. And then there's also the Cessna C182S, which is also really good. So let's talk about how you would install an aircraft that you found on GitHub like this. So basically what you need to do is you need to copy the URL, open up a terminal. Let's see, let me close this. Let me go to my aircraft directory. So I'm in this directory right now. So once you've cloned the repositories for the aircraft that you're interested in like this, you can also basically very easily update them. One way to do it would be to do it manually by going, for example, cd A320 family and running git pull. And that would pull all the latest updates. In this case, we don't have any. But I kind of made a script here that's called update.bash, and the contents of that script are this. Basically, it just it's a short loop that loops through all the directories here in this directory, and it updates all of them for me. So you can set up something like this as well. So if I just run this, then it just kind of goes through them one by one. There's some updates on the MD-11, so and on the MD-80 as well. There's a lot of them coming out these days because like they're being quite actively developed, like I said. So so once you kind of updated them, you might also like to know what changes were made. So in order to do that, you can read the logs for that repository and see what comments the developers left on the commits that they made to the repository. So in order to do this, you can use git log, and you can again either cd to the directory. So for example, let's go to like whatever A320 again, and we can use git log, and we can see what changes were made. So you can do this, but there's also what I think is a better way. And first of all, let's go back to the previous directory where we were. So you don't need to really change to the directory. If you don't want to, you can use git with the -c option, and then you can pass the path to the directory that interests you. Let's use the MD11 for example, because it had some updates. So you can pass the path to this directory like this, and it will have the same effect as being like CDing to that directory. So git will work the same as though you were in that directory already. So use the -C option for this. And then we can also filter out the commits. We can tell git log to only show us the commit messages that were pulled basically the last time we ran git pull. So to do this, you can pass it an argument that looks like this. So the @ symbol, and then in curly braces 1, and then also dot, and that will output only the changes that were made since the last commit. So this is what these are the changes that were committed since the last time I ran git pull. You can see that there's only like 3 pages in this case. Quite a lot of commits still, but this way you can clearly see what was updated since the last time you ran git pull, and it's much easier to get an idea of what changes were made. So this is how I tend to work with these repositories. So let's now take a quick look at what we need to do in the graphical interface in order for FlightGear to find these aircraft. I think I already covered that in sort of like the section where we talked about launching FlightGear and file management. But let's just kind of quickly recap this again, because it's not that won't take a long time. You simply need to add your aircraft directory here to the additional aircraft folders, and then the aircraft from that folder will show up here under aircraft. So that's how you can do that. From the command line, if you're using the fgfsrc files, you can also use the --aircraft option potentially with the --aircraft-dir option. It might be necessary, but I'll get to that in a moment. So you can list the aircraft that are available currently by using the show aircraft option. So if you run it with the show aircraft option, it will print a list of all the available aircraft. I also get this like these warnings. This has something to do with the current development state of FlightGear. So I'll just silence them by redirecting the standard error to dev null, so we don't see any of that. So we just get the aircraft, the list of the available aircraft, and so you get the names, list of names here. These are the values that you can use for the --aircraft option. So and in your FGFSRC files, you also need to define the directory for your kind of aircraft that you downloaded from somewhere else, just like you do in the graphical interface when you add that aircrafts folder. This is the same thing that you do here for the command line way of launching FlightGear. So once you add that, your aircraft should show up here in this list, and then you can add them. So now what was that thing about the aircraft-dir option? So that option allows you to distinguish between two aircraft with the same name but located in different directories. You might encounter this situation if you install the same aircraft from the, for example, from the FG add-on through the FlightGear graphical interface, and when you have, like, for example, a development version of that aircraft downloaded from GitHub, let's say. So it would, in that case, both aircraft would have the same name. So in order to distinguish between the two, you might want to set, you might have to set the --aircraft-dir option, and you have to point it to the specific directory where the aircraft files are located. So right now I have it commented out because I don't have the A320 from the FG add-on installed. I'm just using the development one, but So yeah, you might have to do that if you have that installed. I would also like to mention a YouTube channel of a developer who creates very high quality models of aircraft systems. So he is the person who developed the systems for the Airbus, and he is also the one who's working on the MD-11 and MD-80 currently. So basically, actually, all of these 5 aircraft that I recommended are he works to create systems for them. Even the Cessna has his work in it. So whenever I see his username, which is octal450, it's kind of a good indication that that's probably a very good aircraft model. So I thought I would mention his YouTube channel here because he does really great work, and he makes videos talking about the updates that he makes to his models and stuff like that. So it's very interesting. So check out his channel. Now I also wanted to mention a couple of quick things about the A320 that I used in the first section of this video. So these have to do with how to get the navigation data working, and then also about how to use the tiller. If you remember, you might remember that I mentioned it during the demonstration flight, and also the gravity gear extension. So I'll just mention these things real quick in this section of the video here. So the nav data are linked in the README of the A320 family repo over here at the bottom. So here are those 2 repositories. So you want to clone them to your scenery directory wherever you have that. We talked about setting your scenery directories in the previous parts of this video. So you do it over here in the graphical interface, and for the command line you do it by using the FG scenery option. You can set it multiple times if you have multiple scenery directories. So in my setup, let's see, I have a folder called scenery in my kind of custom data folder for FlightGear. So I'll just cd to scenery right now, and I also have a subfolder there that I've called nav data, because nav data is kind of something different from a regular scenery, so I created a subfolder for that. And I have these 2 subdirectories here. So basically you want to clone these 2 repositories, or like if you want maybe one of them. So let me kind of say a few words about the 2 and kind of what they include. Let's see. This FlightGear star SID manager, you can basically just clone it, and then there's these 2 subfolders. So let's see, FlightGear star SID manager, and there's two subfolders that are called 2020.3 and 2020.4. So depending on the FlightGear version that you're using, choose the one that is closest to the version that you're using. And basically add that to your either graphical interface or FGFSRC files. So the folder that you add to the folder that you specify as your scenery directory, either in the graphical or here, has to have this airports folder inside. So that's how you will recognize that that's the right folder. Now let me talk about this navigate data folder and why I have a symbolic link here instead of it just the repository like I have for the star SID manager. So the reason for that is because basically what I did there, let me show you. So I'll just run lsa to show the hidden files, and I'll run it on FG navigate data. You can see that I have a hidden folder here called .files, and in that folder, that's where I cloned the actual directory, the actual repository. So that's where that is located. The reason why I did that is because there is no airports folder there, and if there is no airports folder, FlightGear can't recognize it as a scenery directory. So basically, let me see. I think it's the entire repo that is basically the airports folder. So if I run ls with the long option, long listing, we can see that my symbolic link points to .files, FGData, finished. Oh, it's in finished. So basically, yeah, the airports folder here is called finished. So that's why I called it this. So that's kind of a way to work around the kind of the naming of files in that repository. I hope this makes sense. So this is a scenery. I'm not going to spend any more time talking about this. This is not that complicated. Once you have this installed, you should have like departure routes and arrival routes available in your flight management computer in the A320. I also wanted to mention a couple of quick things about the joystick bindings and keyboard bindings for the A320. So there are just two bindings. One for the tiller, so this is the property that you want to assign your tiller to, so that's controls gear steering. I just had to look for it by browsing through the property browser and looking through the property browser and hoping that I find it eventually, and I did, but it was very hard. I wish there was just a clear note saying that if you want to use the separate tiller axis, assign this property to your joystick. I don't know, I never saw that mentioned anywhere at all. If it is mentioned somewhere, please let me know. I'd be very interested to see that. But yeah, so that's one thing that I wanted to mention. Another thing is a keyboard binding that I made for the Gravity Gear extension. So if you want to sort of practice, for example, dual engine failure, or if you run out of fuel and stuff like that, where you don't have any engines anymore, you'll need to extend gear by using the Gravity extension. But the actual element of the cockpit currently is not kind of implemented to do anything, so you can't click anything in the cockpit to make the gear extend by using the Gravity extension. So, but there is still a property. Let me see. There is still a property that you can use to make use of the Gravity Gear extension. And if we go ahead and open my keyboard.xml file, you can see it listed over here, Shift-Alt-G Gravity Gear extension. So here's the binding, and here's the property. It's controls, hydraulics, hydraulic switches, and gear gravity ext. So that's again something that you might want to know about, and I thought I would mention it here. But this basically concludes this section on getting high quality realistic aircraft models. So I hope this information was useful to you, and now let's finally move on to the last section of this tutorial, where we talk about the FI interface and the customizations that I made to it. So I've started FlightGear here, and I've opened the FI interface, and I disabled all of my customizations so that you can see how it looks by default. So this is how it looks by default. Now let me talk about my customizations, but before I do, I just need to mention real quick that in order to use these, you need to install a couple of browser extensions. So the first one that you will need is this Violent Monkey extension, or some other extension that allows you to run kind of custom JavaScript in your browser. They're called user scripts. So there's other extensions that that do the same thing, but this one is licensed under the MIT license, and I like this one better, so that's why I'm recommending this one. And then there's also this stylus extension. This allows you to add custom style or like CSS cascading style sheets to your web pages, and customize the look and feel of any website really. But in this case, we're going to be using it to customize the FI interface. So install these two extensions. They're probably available for other browsers as well, and if not, there's probably some other extension that does similar things. So you'll need to have these installed. Now, the first thing that I want to talk about is a script that runs in the Violent Monkey extension. It looks like this. The script is called FlightGear Fi disable dragging own aircraft. So what is that talking about? So disable dragging own aircraft is talking about this button over here. It says, so if I hover over it, it says allow dragging own aircraft. Now, what does it do? So right now we're at this location in this airport, so if I drag the aircraft to some other position, now we're suddenly somewhere else, and I don't know if we are even we're probably somewhere underground, ended up somewhere because there's terrain and now the plane is there. So this is what allowing dragging your own aircraft the problems that it can get you into. So it can really quickly mess up your simulation because it just changes the coordinates of the plane instantaneously. And that's really not something that I personally make any use of. So I decided to disable it, and disable it such that it automatically gets disabled every time I open the FI interface. And it's also I also removed this button entirely because I really don't want to accidentally press it and then mess up my sim, and then I can't do anything from that point because it's been messed up. So basically, right now it's disabled. So let me enable it. Let's find the Violent Monkey here and enable the script. Now I'll refresh the page, and in a few seconds this button should get hidden. The reason there's this delay of a few seconds is because when you open it for the first time, after just launching FlightGear, sometimes there's a delay. It takes a while for the whole page to load, basically. And that's why I added that delay. You can change this value by adjusting this value here. I currently have it set to 6 seconds, so this is in milliseconds, so 6,000 means 6 seconds. Just play around with this value and figure out what works for your system, and you should be good to go. The way you install scripts in this extension is you simply open let's see, so you just click this plus, and then you need to get the script. So you just go ahead and find the file, so you can navigate to it by finding it here in this kind of table of contents thing, and just click here. It will take you to the script file, or maybe you've already run git clone on this git gist and you have it on your computer. In that case, you can just copy it from there. Just copy everything from here, and let's see, just copy everything, and then go ahead and paste it here, and you'll have everything set up. I'm not gonna save it because I already have it installed. So that's the script for disabling dragging on aircraft. This was just real problematic, to put it mildly, at first, but with this script now I can kind of use this map without this problem of accidentally messing up my simulation. So let's now talk about the remaining two customizations that I made to this FI interface, and they are both styles. So you need to use the stylus extension to use them. So they're called dark theme and full screen map. So let's start with the full screen map. So if I enable this, it just simply removes all of the other elements of the interface and makes the map full screen. I only really use the map from here, and it's easy to disable this if you need to have access to other things. So I like to have it full screen and running on a separate monitor when I'm playing, or it's also nice to have it in the tutorial like I did in the first part of this video, somewhere in the corner, a little map showing you where you are in the world. So this is for this. And the dark theme basically looks like this. It kind of makes the colors less bright and easier on the eyes. So this is really all there is to it. Installing these styles is very simple as well. Either click here, this will open a whole new window, so I'm not going to click that because that doesn't work out for my tutorial. Or you can also click over here on options, and you can close this if it pops up for you, and then you can click over here on this plus icon, and you will get a window that looks like this. And again, just simply copy the contents of the files that you can find over here. So this, let's say this is the code for the full screen map. So just copy that, press Ctrl A to select everything, and then paste the contents. So, and then just click save, and the script is or the style is installed. So the same goes for the second style, for the dark theme one. So this is how you install these. So this is it when it comes to customizing the FI interface, and on this note we can conclude this video. It was a very long one, but I wanted to record this because I really wanted to share kind of like the things that I learned in this process of configuring FlightGear and customizing it for myself. So I hope it helps other people to do something similar on their systems and make the whole process a bit easier, because this can be pretty complicated to set up, but once you have everything in place, you can have a very enjoyable experience of playing FlightGear. So this is it. I hope you liked this video. If you would like to support this channel, you can do that at ko-fi.com/linguisticmind. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one.